Absolutely delighted now to be joined by the IACP President, Dekmark. Lewis, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
So let's talk about the Trust Initiative. I know it's one of the priorities of your year as President. What inspired you to make it a priority?
An experience I had locally as I went through the chairs for the board of IACP and talked to colleagues around the world, recognized that it wasn't an issue that was just limited to my jurisdiction or the United States, but in fact the notion of trust in democracies and policing is a cornerstone of a principle of policing and democracy. And as I walked through the challenge of developing trust in our minority communities locally, I felt like there were lessons that could be applied not only nationally but internationally. And as a result, spoke with our elected board and got support for and funding to convene a roundtable with 36 representatives from not only law enforcement but some of our critics, civil rights groups, civic organizations, special interest groups, and for a period we discussed those things that hindered trust and effective working relationships and partnerships with the police, and those things that could be done to overcome them. Then we synthesized that information and went about looking for agencies that would volunteer for us to have a listening session in their community with individuals that were concerned about civil rights issues, was concerned that there needed to be deeper partnerships, or felt like there were some examples that they could share. And we had 4 jurisdictions that agreed to work with us, and those were Albany, New York, Ferguson, Missouri, Sacramento, California, and Fort Morgan, Colorado. During the course of those listening sessions, there were several themes that were developed that I believe are going to have international application that'll further guide us in developing support and resources for agency heads that want to develop deeper partnerships and trust within those communities. Whether there's been historic obstacles to developing those relationships or perhaps some contemporary challenges that have interfered with those relationships.
Tell us about the work that you've done in your own community to build trust.
I became aware of an issue that involved our police department of a young man in 1941 that had been arrested. It's not clear what the charge is because the records were absent. And during the course of one of my captains walking by a hallway, overheard 2 African American women pointing to one of the generation-old pictures of officers that had previously served, pointed to the picture and said, "They killed our people." And that, when she shared that with me, I wasn't sure what they were referencing, but after I did some research, was able to discover what the issue was. And essentially, the individual that we had arrested, African American, was abducted and taken from the police and then shot and killed out in the county. And the relatives and the friends of that individual, that story's passed on from generation to generation and had interfered with the ability of the police department to develop the kind of relationships that make for effective public safety. And I think frequently, at least in my case, I confused individual trust that I had developed with that relationship with the institutional trust that's necessary to go forward.
Tell us about the report that's coming out at the conference.
The report has synthesized the information that we gathered at the roundtable and then the individual listening sessions, and that will be paired up with tools and resources that have been developed that any agency head, rather than just kind of finding their own path, will have a path that they can choose kind of cafeteria style, those tools that they think would be helpful to further engage their community.
Well, thank you very much indeed for sharing with us. It's such an exciting project. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
ICP TV has all the coverage you want from this year's conference. Make sure to explore all of our content, which is updated each and every day of the conference, to stay up to date with all the very latest news in the world of policing.